Emily Carson parked her car in the crowded downtown San Antonio parking lot, the sun still hanging low in the sky, casting long shadows across the asphalt. It was Friday evening, and the city hummed with energy. The distant blare of a car horn, laughter spilling from a nearby coffee shop, music pulsing faintly from a gym across the street. Emily had spent the last hour at the gym herself, sweating through her usual routine, pushing her limits with squats, sprints, and punches on the heavy bag. She felt drained, yet alive, the post-workout rush humming in her veins. Today had been just another ordinary day, or so she thought. She grabbed her gym bag, slinging it over her shoulder, and started toward her car. Her leather sneakers clicked sharply against the concrete, echoing off the walls of the surrounding buildings. She was humming softly to herself, a habit she had when she was lost in thought, when her eyes caught movement near the far end of the lot. A man tall, broad, and tense was arguing loudly with someone who had been innocently walking by. His voice carried over the lot, rough, accusatory, edged with anger. Emily paused for a moment, instinctively sensing tension. She had grown up around trouble. Her father was a retired police officer who had taught her to notice the subtle signs of conflict, the way a hand twitched near a pocket, the slight widening of the eyes before a sudden lunge. She watched, cautious but detached, thinking she might just be witnessing an argument that would blow over. Then, without warning, the man spun around and looked directly at her. His eyes were sharp, his jaw clenched, and something in the way he moved made her chest tighten. "You," he barked. The word cut through the air like a knife. Emily froze, heart skipping a beat. She had no idea what he was talking about. She took a cautious step back, her hand instinctively brushing against the strap of her gym bag. Before she could react further, he charged. The man was faster than she expected. He grabbed her by the shoulders with alarming force, yanking her toward him. The crowd in the lot froze, uncertain if they should intervene. Emily's body slammed against the asphalt with a violent jolt, the concrete biting into her side and shoulder. Pain exploded across her body, sharp and disorienting, yet her mind cleared instantly. This was instinct. This was training. Emily had trained in Krav Maga for years, not for competitions, not for show, but for situations exactly like this. Her body moved before her mind could even fully comprehend. She twisted slightly, feeling the man's grip loosen as she shifted her weight, searching for leverage. The roar of nearby traffic and distant conversations faded into white noise. Time seemed to stretch. Every second mattered. One false move could spell disaster. The man's face twisted in surprise and rage as Emily planted her feet firmly on the ground. His hands still gripped her shoulders, but the momentum of his charge worked against him. She bent her knees, shifted her hips, and in a single fluid motion, flipped him over her shoulder. The sound of him hitting the concrete was loud, a sickening thud that echoed across the lot. Gasps erupted from the bystanders. A few people instinctively reached for their phones. The man tried to scramble upright, his hands sliding across the rough asphalt. His mouth opened to yell, but his voice was caught in his own shock. Emily remained steady, her knees slightly bent, arms raised, eyes locked on him. "Don't move," she said, her voice calm, cold, and commanding. For a moment, everything hung suspended. The world had narrowed to two people in the middle of a sun-drenched parking lot, her and him. Around them, the crowd murmured, whispering in awe, but no one dared intervene. Some people's faces were pale. Others were frozen in disbelief. A woman clutched her child, whispering, "Did you see that?" She just flipped him. Emily's adrenaline surged. Her breaths were shallow, controlled, each inhale measured. She could feel the heat radiating off her body, her muscles taut like coiled springs. Every fiber of her training screamed at her to stay aware, to anticipate the next move. The man groaned, rubbing his back, clearly humiliated, but not entirely defeated. He attempted another lunge, but Emily's stance was unyielding. She shifted her weight subtly, her hands ready to react. From the edge of the lot, a uniformed officer appeared, jogging toward the commotion. Emily recognized him immediately. It was Officer Daniels, her instructor from the police academy. His eyes widened in surprise as he took in the scene. He wasn't shouting or waving. He simply assessed, his experience telling him that this situation was under control for now. "You okay?" he asked as he approached, his voice steady. Emily nodded, still focused, still aware. She had no desire to appear dramatic. She wasn't acting. This was survival. "Yeah," she said, her voice even controlled. Her eyes never left the man. "Stay down." The crowd began whispering again, recounting what had just happened, and someone finally called 911. The man, Jake Turner, struggled to get upright, his movements jerky and uncoordinated. He was dazed, humiliated, and increasingly angry. Emily's focus never wavered. She could feel his gaze burning into her, but she refused to meet it directly. Control wasn't just physical, it was mental. A teenager near the edge of the lot shouted, "Whoa! Did she just throw him?" Another bystander, shaking, held up his phone. "This is going on TikTok." Emily's chest tightened momentarily, not from fear, but from awareness of the world's eyes now on her. She ignored it. Fame, social media, or attention had no bearing on her actions. What mattered was the moment. The man tried to lunge again, but Emily shifted her hips slightly, her weight perfectly balanced. He faltered. His confidence crumbled. He realized he had underestimated her. And for the first time, she allowed herself a flicker of awareness. Of the bystanders' awe, the collective breath that had been held and released. By now, Officer Daniels was close enough to intervene if necessary, but he stopped short, observing. Emily had not panicked. She had not screamed. She had executed every move precisely, every step in perfect harmony with her training. The world around them felt suspended in time, the distant city noises fading, the harsh concrete and warm air pressing in, the adrenaline thrumming through her veins. And then, finally, the man stopped moving toward her. He sank slightly, recognizing defeat in the skill and precision before him. Emily remained vigilant, her stance unrelenting, but a subtle sense of satisfaction washed over her. She had survived. She had defended herself. And in doing so, she had commanded the attention, respect, and silent admiration of everyone who had witnessed it. Emily Carson's heart still pounded in her chest, every beat echoing through her body like a warning drum. The taste of dust and asphalt lingered faintly on her lips from the fall moments ago, but she had no time to dwell on it. Her senses were alive, firing in rapid succession. The shallow breaths of the man sprawled on the ground, the subtle shifting of bystanders' feet, the faint scuff of sneakers against asphalt. Every second mattered. The man Jake Turner, as someone in the crowd finally yelled, groaned, and rolled slightly onto his side, trying to regain his balance. His pride had taken a hard hit, his ego bruised more than his body. Emily's eyes locked onto his, unblinking, commanding. "Don't move," she said again, this time louder, her voice steady, resonant, carrying a weight he couldn't ignore. He hesitated. For a brief moment, she thought he might attack again, but instead, his anger seemed to falter under the sheer precision and control in her stance. He tried to rise, hands braced against the concrete, muscles trembling from exertion, but every movement was uncoordinated. Emily adjusted slightly, shifting her weight back to maintain her balance, ready for any sudden lunge. The crowd's murmurs had escalated. Phones were out, recording every second of the unfolding event. "She flipped him," someone shouted. Did you see that? Another voice, shaky, muttered, I can't believe that just happened. Emily ignored them. Their awe was irrelevant. What mattered was controlling the situation. Control, she reminded herself, was the difference between victory and disaster. Adrenaline surged through her, but she had learned to harness it rather than let it dictate her actions. Each breath was precise, measured, fueling her concentration rather than panic. She had trained for years in Krav Maga and defensive tactics, not to show off, but so that moments like this would not be her first introduction to survival. The man staggered slightly, his hands reaching for her, but Emily reacted instantly. She shifted her hips again, her stance low, arms slightly extended. Every movement was calculated. Weight distribution, leverage, anticipation. She had flipped him once, yes, but that didn't guarantee the confrontation was over. She wouldn't let it be. Nearby, a young man with a baseball cap shouted into his phone, Call 911. Somebody's getting attacked. Another bystander began moving closer, hesitant, unsure whether to intervene. Emily's gaze swept the perimeter. She calculated distances, noted potential escape routes, and mentally filed the positions of bystanders. None of them were in immediate danger, but she remained vigilant. Every extra eye, every small distraction could affect her focus. Then came the sound of sirens. A patrol car turned the corner, lights flashing red and blue, reflecting off the shiny surfaces of nearby vehicles. Emily felt a small surge of relief backup had arrived. Officer Daniels stepped out, his presence grounding. He had been her instructor at the academy, the man who had drilled discipline and control into her every week. Now he observed silently, assessing without interference, knowing that this was Emily's moment. Jake Turner struggled again, this time more visibly frustrated, his pride eclipsing reason. He attempted another lunge, faster than before, but Emily anticipated it. She sidestepped slightly, using the man's momentum against him once more. A harsh grunt escaped him as his chest collided with the asphalt again, though this time it was less dramatic. She didn't strike, she didn't need to. The threat had been neutralized. Her mind raced despite the adrenaline. She considered the legality, the consequences, the possible outcomes. Self-defense was clear, but she also knew her actions were being watched, recorded, and would soon be dissected by strangers online. She focused on the immediate danger, knowing that analysis could come later. Emily had no desire for attention, but she did demand accountability. From the edge of the lot, someone began narrating for the recording. Look at her. She just flipped him like it was nothing. Emily's jaw tightened slightly, but she ignored the commentary. Distraction was her enemy. She continued to monitor. The man, reading subtle cues in his body language, the tension in his shoulders, the slight tremor in his hands, the way his gaze darted nervously around. Officer Daniels finally approached, hands at his sides but ready. Emily? He said quietly, a mix of astonishment and pride in his voice. She nodded once, acknowledging him without lowering her guard. I've got this, she replied softly, though not for him, the words were for herself. Control was maintained, authority established. She didn't need validation, only clarity. The man's attempts at aggression slowed as he realized no one was going to help him regain dominance. Emily's precision and calm were unrelenting, intimidating in a subtle, undeniable way. His breathing grew heavier, his movements more erratic. His attempts to rise were clumsy, hampered by both his body and the perception of the crowd around him. Everyone could see the shift. The fight was no longer his. By now, multiple phones were recording, some streaming live. She's incredible, one voice exclaimed. Did you see that flip? Emily's lips pressed together. She didn't care about being incredible. She cared about being safe, about ensuring the man posed no further threat. Every movement, Every subtle shift in stance was a lesson in focus, control, and awareness. Finally, she allowed herself a slight relaxation of her posture, not out of complacency, but because the threat had diminished. The man slumped slightly, shoulders sagging, frustration mixing with fear. Emily's eyes stayed locked on him, not with anger, but with unwavering vigilance. She had won this confrontation with precision and restraint, a silent demonstration of skill over brute force. Officer Daniels crouched nearby, motioning for the man to stop struggling. "You're done," he said firmly. The man froze, disbelief in his eyes, unable to comprehend how one woman had overpowered him with such skill and control. Emily stood tall, shoulders squared, eyes scanning the crowd and streets beyond. Every nerve in her body was still alive, alert, aware. The bystanders began murmuring again, recounting what they had seen. Some praised her, some were shocked, some whispered to each other. But Emily ignored them. Her mind focused on the next steps, keeping the man restrained until authorities could fully intervene, ensuring bystanders were safe, and finally processing the adrenaline and fear she had just harnessed. Even as the first responders approached, Emily stayed vigilant. She knew danger could linger in the smallest spaces, the glances of the man, the reactions of those around her, the chaos of a crowd. Her body remained coiled, ready for action, but she also allowed a subtle, internal acknowledgement of relief. She had survived. She had prevailed. And she had done so without losing control. Finally, Jake Turner was fully restrained by police officers. Emily took a step back, allowing a breath she hadn't realized she had been holding. Her muscles loosened slightly, tension ebbing. She glanced around the lot. Some people were filming, others were wide-eyed, and a few applauded quietly. The world had witnessed her strength, but Emily only cared about the quiet lessons: focus, awareness, and calm under pressure. She exhaled slowly, feeling the adrenaline subside. Today, she had not only defended herself, she had demonstrated the power of preparation, skill, and presence of mind. The man on the ground was no longer a threat, and the crowd's fascination faded into a quiet hum of city life. Emily Carson stood in the center of the lot, dust on her clothes, scraped arms, but her mind sharper than ever. This moment, she knew, would stay with her not as a viral video or a public spectacle, but as a vivid testament to the importance of control, courage, and readiness. And as she adjusted her bag and prepared to leave, she knew the story of this day was far from over. The crowd around the parking lot had shifted from shock to cautious fascination. Phones were still recording, their bright screens flickering in the dimming San Antonio sunlight. Emily Carson's eyes scanned the perimeter once more, not out of paranoia, but out of instinct. She needed to know the layout, the positions of every bystander, the distance to her car, and the nearest exit. Her senses were stretched taut, like a bowstring, ready to snap at the first sign of danger. Nearby, the man Jake Turner sat slumped against a curb, groaning quietly, clutching his side. His anger had not entirely faded, but the initial shock of being overpowered by a woman had drained much of his confidence. His eyes darted around nervously, avoiding Emily's gaze, searching for allies, but finding only a crowd of stunned witnesses. Emily maintained her stance, body coiled and ready, but her mind was already processing the next steps. Officer Daniels approached slowly, hands resting casually at his sides, a visible mix of pride and disbelief in his eyes. He had seen plenty of confrontations, plenty of situations where men underestimated women. But this display of control, precision, and calm under pressure was exceptional. "Emily?" he said quietly, voice cutting through the low murmurs of the crowd. She gave a nod, still alert, still calculating. "I've got him," he said, signaling the other officers. The surrounding bystanders murmured to each other, whispers growing louder. "She didn't even break a sweat," one said. "I can't believe she just threw him like that," said another. Some clutched their phones, replaying the video that had already gone viral among a few social media circles. Emily barely registered it. Public attention, the rush of admiration, it was irrelevant. What mattered was the man, the threat, and maintaining absolute control. One young woman, trembling, clutched her child tightly. "Thank God she was here," she whispered to a friend. Emily's eyes softened momentarily, acknowledging the relief she had inadvertently provided. She hadn't acted to save anyone else. Her actions had been purely self-defense, but she realized, in a quiet way, that her presence had provided protection for those around her. That realization gave her a small, unexpected satisfaction. Meanwhile, Jake Turner began to mumble incoherently, trying to explain, justify, and deflect responsibility. She provoked me. "I didn't," his voice faltered as Officer Daniels crouched near him, gently but firmly holding his shoulder to prevent any further sudden movements. "It's over," Daniels said, voice firm and controlled. "You've been overpowered. Stop resisting." Emily's eyes didn't leave him. She didn't need to say anything. The authority in her stance, the calm precision of her movements, had already established dominance. The crowd remained on edge, some stepping closer, some retreating, unsure if the confrontation was truly over. Emily's training told her to maintain focus. Never let your guard down. Every slight twitch in the man's hands, every shift in his weight, could indicate a sudden resurgence. She could feel the adrenaline still coursing through her, sharp, electric, and invigorating. Her body ached from the impact with the concrete, but the pain was background noise compared to the precision of her awareness. Someone in the crowd finally called, 911. The dispatcher's voice was calm but urgent as the situation was described. Female subject. Physical altercation. Man on the ground. San Antonio parking lot. Emily's mind absorbed this. Aware that help was en route, but still not letting herself relax entirely. Assistance was coming. Yes, but she could not rely solely on it. Her training dictated vigilance until the threat was completely neutralized. Bystanders started describing the attack to each other, recounting every detail as if they were narrators of a story unfolding before them. "She flipped him like it was nothing," one said. "Look at her stance, so controlled," said another. Emily allowed herself a brief glance at the video recordings, seeing the precise movements captured from multiple angles. Even in slow-motion playback, it was evident. Every decision she had made had been deliberate, precise, and effective. This wasn't luck. This wasn't happenstance. This was skill honed over years of training. Daniels finally stood up straight, signaling for other officers to secure the man fully. "Emily," he said quietly, "walk away from him now." She complied, moving back a few steps, still alert, but gradually lowering her arms. The crowd began to relax, though whispers of awe continued. Emily felt a small shiver of awareness, not fear, but respect for the intensity of the moment she had just navigated. She noticed something in the man's eyes, now confusion, disbelief, and a faint glimmer of recognition. He was realizing, finally, that brute aggression alone had no power over her. He had miscalculated entirely. And in that recognition, Emily understood the psychological victory she had already claimed. It was not about humiliation. It was about survival, about asserting control without losing herself to rage or panic. The dispatcher's voice returned over someone's speakerphone, confirming that additional units were on the way. Emily scanned the crowd again, noting a few bystanders who were moving closer, still curious, still trying to witness more. She adjusted her stance slightly, a subtle reminder to herself, never assume the situation is fully under control until the authorities confirm it. Then, as if on cue, One of the bystanders, an older man with a camera, approached cautiously. "Ma'am," he said, voice respectful, "I've never seen anyone handle themselves like that. You're amazing." Emily shook her head slightly, a faint, almost imperceptible smile crossing her lips. "I just defended myself," she said, calm, measured. "No need for embellishment, no need for dramatics. The truth alone was enough." The man on the ground, Jake Turner, attempted to mutter another protest, but Daniels stepped forward, crouching again and speaking with authority. "You've had your chance. Stop resisting," he commanded. Turner froze, realizing he had no power here, no room to escalate. Emily watched closely, her eyes sharp, ready to act if necessary. But the lesson had been learned. Control had shifted entirely. In those tense moments, Emily reflected silently. This wasn't just a physical confrontation. It was mental, emotional, and social. She had faced fear, pain, and aggression, yet had maintained composure throughout. Every step, every pivot, every breath had been deliberate. She realized the deeper truth. True strength was not in brute force, but in the mastery of oneself, the anticipation of danger, and the ability to act decisively under pressure. By now, additional police units had arrived, officers quickly assessing the scene and securing the area. Witnesses were beginning to provide statements, recounting the events in meticulous detail. Emily stepped aside, letting Daniels and the officers handle the formalities. She knew she would have to recount everything later, but for now, her focus remained clear. Her body still hummed with adrenaline, her muscles taut, her senses alert. Finally, Daniels looked at her, eyes meeting hers, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. "You handled that perfectly," he said softly, pride evident in his tone. Emily gave a small nod, still catching her breath, her mind replaying the seconds of impact, leverage, and movement. The crowd began to dissipate slowly, murmuring to each other, sharing videos and stories. But Emily's mind remained grounded. Even as the excitement faded, Emily understood the lasting impact of the moment. She had survived, defended herself, and demonstrated the power of composure under pressure. The man on the ground was no longer a threat, but the lessons she had reinforced in her mind would stay with her forever. Vigilance, control, awareness, and decisiveness. As she finally straightened, brushing dust and grit from her clothes, Emily allowed herself a brief glance at the parking lot around her. People were whispering, filming, and processing what had just happened. She adjusted her gym bag over her shoulder, muscles still taut, but confidence slowly returning. Today had tested every ounce of her training, her instincts, and her composure, and she had passed. And in that moment, Emily Carson realized something profound. Strength was not just about the ability to fight, it was about knowing when, how, and why to act. Survival depended not on aggression, but on calm, precise action under pressure. She had demonstrated that to herself, to the crowd, and unknowingly, to the world. Once Jake Turner was finally secured in the police vehicle, Emily stepped back, letting the officers handle the formalities. Her muscles still throbbed with adrenaline, but her mind had begun to shift into observation mode. She surveyed the scene carefully, scanning the parking lot and nearby streets for any loose ends, potential threats, or unexpected dangers. Despite the chaos of the last few minutes, her breathing had slowed slightly, measured, precise, a reflection of training meeting reality. Witnesses gathered near the curb, speaking rapidly into phones or to each other, attempting to narrate the sequence of events, while the adrenaline of witnessing such a dramatic confrontation still pulsed through their veins. Emily's mind catalogued every reaction, the mother clutching her child tightly, the teenagers whispering incredulously to each other, the office workers leaning out from nearby buildings, eyes wide, some capturing footage. For many of them, This incident was extraordinary, almost cinematic. For Emily, it was simply survival in action. Officer Daniels finally approached, crouching near her as he always did when situations demanded calm authority. "Emily," he said quietly, voice just above the low hum of conversation, "are you all right?" She nodded, her jaw tight, eyes scanning one last time for danger. "Yes, I'm fine," she replied, voice steady. She didn't need to embellish or dramatize her experience. Her actions spoke louder than words. Daniels studied her for a moment, clearly impressed, but careful not to overstate his amazement. Nearby, a reporter who had been filming on their phone finally spoke aloud. "Ma'am, do you realize what just happened? People are sharing this video everywhere." Emily gave a subtle shake of her head. "I defended myself," she said simply. That was all there was to it. No bravado, no sensationalism, just the bare truth. Yet, even as she said it, she couldn't ignore the ripple her actions had created. In the age of instant social media, everything, even a private moment of survival, could become public overnight. The dispatcher's voice came through the officer's radio. Unit 14 reporting. Additional officers on scene. Statements being taken. Suspect secured. Witnesses safe. Emily's gaze swept over the lot, noticing the officers methodically taking statements, securing the perimeter, and organizing bystanders who had congregated near the edge of the confrontation. It was a strange contrast, the chaos of a violent encounter settling into the quiet, methodical order of law enforcement procedure. A few bystanders approached Emily cautiously, their expressions a mix of awe, relief, and curiosity. "I've never seen anyone defend themselves like that," one said softly. "How did you do it?" Emily simply smiled faintly, not out of pride, but as acknowledgement. "Training," she replied. "Years of training." She felt the lingering sting in her shoulders and arms, minor abrasions from the asphalt, but pain was secondary. Control had mattered more. Precision had mattered more. Timing had mattered more. And now, as the crowd continued to murmur, she realized the truth. Her skill had not only protected her, but had set an example of calm authority in chaos. Then Daniels handed her a small clipboard. "They want your statement," he said. Emily took it, noting the detail of the questions and the precision with which she would have to recount the confrontation. She knew she would be asked about every second: the initial shove, the fall, the flip, her stance, his reactions, her thoughts, and her exact movements. Every word mattered. Accuracy mattered. She breathed deeply, feeling the residual tension ebbing slowly, but remaining alert to the potential unpredictability of both Jake Turner and the crowd around them. As she began recounting the incident, several facts began to emerge. Turner had no legitimate grievance. He wasn't provoked, nor had Emily interacted with him before that moment. His aggression was spontaneous, fueled by frustration from personal issues, including job loss, substance abuse, and a history of impulsive violence. Emily's heart sank slightly as she absorbed this information. He hadn't attacked out of necessity, or even survival. He had lashed out, careless of consequence, leaving her no choice but to respond with skill and decisiveness. The witness statements all aligned. Emily had acted in pure self-defense. Each person described the same sequence: the shove, the slam, the flip, and the final stance of dominance that prevented further escalation. Emily realized, with a strange mixture of pride and humility, how much her training had prepared her not only for physical survival, but for psychological command. Her presence, her posture, her calm authority had prevented additional attacks, potential injuries, or the crowd's interference escalating into chaos. While her statement continued, her mind wandered briefly to the viral potential of the incident. She hated attention. She disliked the idea that millions might witness her in this vulnerable yet powerful moment. Yet the reality was unavoidable. Phones were already being uploaded, social media accounts tagging the location, friends sharing the clips. Emily reminded herself she had no control over public perception, only over her own actions and responses. That was sufficient. That was empowerment. That was control. As the police finalized their reports, Turner was quiet, restrained, and fuming, but subdued under the officer's firm handling. He attempted a weak protest, trying to shift the narrative, claiming provocation. Emily glanced at him briefly, her eyes unyielding. Provocation had not existed. Her actions had been purely defensive. The psychological impact of witnessing his own defeat must have begun to dawn on him. The look in his eyes was a mix of confusion, disbelief, and begrudging recognition. He had underestimated her, and that realization stung more than the physical pain she had inflicted. Emily's gaze swept over the onlookers once more. A mother clutched her child tighter. A young man whispered into his phone, "Did you see that? That woman is insane." Another teenager muttered, "I can't believe she did that without hesitation." Emily allowed herself a faint, private smile. The attention didn't matter. The lesson did. Awareness, composure, and skill mattered. And everyone had witnessed it firsthand, even if they interpreted it differently. Officer Daniels finally stood fully upright, addressing the small crowd. "The situation is under control. Witnesses, thank you for staying calm. Suspect is in custody." Emily exhaled, a long, slow breath that carried both exhaustion and relief. Her muscles were tight, every nerve still alert, but the immediate threat had passed. She realized the importance of processing the experience carefully. The adrenaline was strong, but the mental clarity she maintained had been essential to her survival. The dispatch radio buzzed again, confirming that the suspect would be transported to the precinct for formal processing, and that statements would be logged in full detail. Emily handed over her statement, precise and exacting, recounting every motion, thought, and reaction. She realized the narrative she provided would serve not only law enforcement, but potentially the public. Her clarity, discipline, and composure had created a record of truth that could withstand scrutiny, a testament to her preparedness. As she finished, Daniels looked at her again. "Emily, you handled that perfectly. Calm, precise, in control the entire time." She nodded slightly, but the validation was internal, personal. What mattered most was knowing she had survived, defended herself, and maintained order in chaos. That knowledge carried a weight far greater than any public recognition could provide. Then came the subtle awareness that the world might now be watching. Phones, videos, whispers, social media posts, her actions were being amplified beyond her control. She felt a pang of discomfort at the thought, but it was fleeting. What mattered was the truth of the moment, the skill, and the composure she had demonstrated. That truth was undeniable, and it was hers to own. Emily adjusted her gym bag over her shoulder, taking one final look at the parking lot. The man was gone, secured in the vehicle. Witnesses were dispersing, sharing stories, posting videos, and trying to make sense of the incident. She felt the weight of responsibility still lingering, not for what she had done, but for the clarity of thought and precision that had carried her through the confrontation. And in that quiet reflection, she understood a profound truth. True power wasn't aggression, size, or force. True power was control, composure, and awareness. It was being able to act decisively under pressure, to protect oneself without unnecessary escalation, and to survive with skill and clarity. Today, Emily Carson had embodied that power fully. By the next morning, the world had already begun noticing Emily Carson. The San Antonio sun had barely risen, spilling soft golden light across the city streets, but on every screen in town, and rapidly across the country clips, of the parking lot confrontation were circulating. The video, captured by bystanders from multiple angles, showed her defending herself against Jake Turner with calm precision, flipping him over with a skill that left viewers awestruck. Within hours, the footage went viral, shared on every social media platform imaginable. Millions of views, thousands of comments praising her courage, and local news channels calling her a hero flooded her phone. Emily awoke to the buzz of notifications, her phone vibrating incessantly across the nightstand. Her first instinct was irritation. Attention was the last thing she wanted. She had acted in self-defense. She had survived. That was enough. Fame, applause, and adulation were irrelevant. Yet as she scrolled, reading comment after comment, "That woman is incredible. How does someone move like that? She just put a man twice her size on the ground." She couldn't help but feel a flicker of recognition. People were noticing what she had long known. Skill, awareness, and composure mattered more than strength or size. Despite the viral sensation, Emily went about her morning routine quietly. She brewed coffee, her movements methodical, muscles still humming from the adrenaline of the previous day. Each sip grounded her, pulling her back to reality. Her gym bag sat neatly by the door, a faint reminder of yesterday's chaos. She reviewed her training schedule, noting areas for improvement, recalling how she had executed each defensive maneuver. The flip, the stance, the timing all precise. She was proud, not for the applause, but for her mastery of herself. Meanwhile, news outlets had picked up the story. Headlines splashed across digital and print platforms. Woman flips attacker in downtown parking lot. San Antonio officer trainee stops violent assault. And Emily Carson's moment of bravery goes viral. Reporters called incessantly, some requesting interviews, others seeking commentary. Emily ignored most of the calls, retreating to the quiet discipline of her routine. Fame was fleeting. Skill was permanent. And she had worked for years to earn that skill. The police department also began to receive attention. Officer Daniels and other academy instructors were asked for statements, highlighting the significance of Emily's training. Her response was textbook perfect, Daniels had said to a local news crew, careful to balance pride with professionalism. She maintained control, composure, and safety. It's rare to see such calm, precise action in real-life situations. Emily, watching the interview on her phone, felt a small smile tug at her lips. Validation wasn't the goal, but acknowledgement of discipline was satisfying in a quiet way. Despite the public attention, Emily continued her normal life. She reported to the police academy, attending drills, practicing defensive maneuvers, and completing tactical exercises. Her peers teased her gently, calling her the viral cop, but she laughed quietly, humbly. Fame didn't change her. It merely highlighted the skills she had spent years perfecting. Each push-up, each Krav Maga drill, each breath control exercise contributed to that moment, and she understood it deeply. Yet at night, as she replayed the events of the parking lot in her mind, doubts and reflections crept in. What if she had hesitated? What if her stance had faltered? What if Jake Turner had been faster, stronger, more aggressive? Emily knew that perfection wasn't guaranteed in self-defense. Survival relied on constant awareness, anticipation, and control. Each thought she analyzed, each movement she visualized, became a lesson in discipline and mental acuity. The viral attention could not teach her that. Only experience and reflection could. The reactions online fascinated her. People debated, theorized, and analyzed every second of the encounter. Some were inspired, young women reaching out to say they felt empowered by her actions, men acknowledging the importance of skill over aggression. Others were shocked, viewers repeating phrases like, "How can someone defend themselves like that?" And she didn't even hesitate. Emily ignored most commentary, but she recognized the influence her actions had on others. In that sense, she realized, fame had its value. It could inspire caution, awareness, and confidence. Within the department, there were more practical repercussions. Academy instructors began reviewing their curriculum, citing Emily's response as an example of how training translated to real-world scenarios. Discussions emerged about self-defense preparedness, situational awareness, and mental discipline. Emily, ever humble, did not seek recognition, but she quietly absorbed the importance of her actions. What she had done in seconds had created ripples far beyond the parking lot. It wasn't about praise. It was about demonstrating what preparation and composure could accomplish. Meanwhile, Emily received a message from Jake Turner's mother. Her voice trembled over the phone. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "You didn't just protect yourself, you may have saved him from himself. He's been struggling, and if you hadn't acted, I don't know what might have happened." Emily listened carefully, processing the unexpected gratitude. She had not acted for anyone's benefit other than her own safety. Yet hearing this made her realize that the consequences of her actions extended beyond immediate survival. Sometimes, defense could inadvertently become intervention. Social media continued to explode. Memes, reaction videos, and articles proliferated. Viewers dissected her movements with slow-motion analysis, comparing them to professional martial arts techniques. Her flip became iconic in online circles. While Emily didn't crave attention, she recognized the potential of influence. In a subtle, unexpected way, her actions were empowering others, reminding them that control, awareness, and calm could overcome aggression. Fame, she realized, wasn't about her. It was about spreading a lesson in preparedness and skill. Despite the attention, she remained grounded. Her training did not pause. If anything, it intensified. Each session, each drill became sharper, more focused. Emily reflected on yesterday's encounter, examining the smallest movements, the subtle shifts in weight and balance that had made the difference. Skill was never perfect, but deliberate analysis brought her closer to mastery. Every second in the parking lot had been a test, and she had passed. Yet she knew the lessons continued. Vigilance, adaptability, and mental clarity were ongoing responsibilities. Emily's peers continued teasing her in good humor. "You're famous now, Carson," one said, smirking during a drill session. "Better autograph some photos before everyone forgets you." She smiled faintly, the joke not lost on her, but fame wasn't her goal. Her satisfaction came from mastery, not applause. She had survived. She had defended herself. She had demonstrated control and precision under extreme pressure. That was enough. By evening, Emily allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. She sat quietly in her apartment, coffee in hand, scrolling through articles and comments. Each post, each video, each reaction told a story of admiration, disbelief, or inspiration. But the most important story, the one she carried internally, was about the power of skill, composure, and awareness. Fame was fleeting. Preparation lasted. Influence came not from applause, but from example. And in that quiet understanding, Emily felt a deep sense of purpose. Her muscles still hummed with residual tension, the echo of adrenaline lingering, but a quiet clarity replaced panic. She understood the responsibility she now carried. Millions had seen her response, but only she knew the thought, calculation, and discipline behind every movement. It wasn't just about physical power, it was about mental strength, emotional control, and situational awareness. The parking lot had tested every one of these, and she had emerged intact, alert, and wiser. As the night settled over San Antonio, Emily prepared for another day of training. Her reflection in the mirror revealed a woman focused, disciplined, and grounded. She had faced aggression, uncertainty, and chaos, yet she had maintained control. Fame could come and go, but the lessons endured. Each breath, each movement, each conscious choice to remain vigilant, prepared, and decisive would carry her further than any viral video ever could. And with that, Emily Carson embraced the reality she had long understood. True strength lies in mastery of oneself. Days had passed since the viral incident, but the echoes of that chaotic parking lot confrontation lingered in Emily Carson's mind. Though life had begun to return to a semblance of normalcy, the world outside seemed different. Phones still buzzed with notifications, messages from friends, acquaintances, and strangers alike flowed continuously, and social media remained alive with admiration, disbelief, and analysis of her precision and calm. Yet amid the digital storm, a quiet, unexpected reality was about to unfold, one that would test her understanding of strength, compassion, and the human impact of her actions. Emily's phone rang early one morning, displaying an unfamiliar number. She answered cautiously. "Hello?" Her voice was measured, a reflection of her habitual caution. On the other end, a woman spoke softly, almost hesitantly. "Hello, Miss Carson. My name is Marcia Turner. I'm Jake Turner's mother." Emily froze briefly, processing the voice and the connection. Memories of the parking lot, the shove, the slam, the flip flashed through her mind. Despite everything, she remained composed. "Yes," she said finally. "I remember. How can I help?" Marcia's voice trembled. I don't know where to start. After that day, seeing how you handled him, you didn't just protect yourself, you might have saved him. He's been struggling, Emily. Addiction, unemployment, anger. I've tried everything. And I was terrified yesterday, watching what happened. You may have prevented something worse. Emily listened quietly, the weight of her actions settling in a new way. She had acted purely in self-defense, but hearing this, she understood an unexpected consequence of her decisiveness. "Mom, I know," Marcia continued, her voice shaking with emotion. "I can't explain it, but I think he's beginning to reflect. He's scared, but he's thinking. He hasn't lashed out again. And I can't help but think it's because of you. You didn't hurt him more than necessary. You just stopped him. I don't know how to thank you." Emily paused, letting the words sink in. The power of restraint had created a ripple far beyond the immediate confrontation. "I appreciate you saying that," Emily replied softly. She had no idea what to say. Gratitude was not something she had expected, especially from the family of the man she had just overpowered. "I didn't act to save him," she continued carefully. "I acted to protect myself. But if it helped him, that's good. That's something." Her voice carried the weight of honesty. Actions, consequences, and impact often diverged in ways she could never fully predict. Marcia spoke again, voice steadier now. Would you be willing to meet him? To maybe talk with him? He needs someone to show him the seriousness of what happened. I think hearing it from you would make a difference." Emily considered the request. She had defended herself, and the confrontation was over. But part of her recognized the importance of consequence, of accountability, and of the potential to influence behavior positively. She agreed, cautiously. "I'll consider it," she said. The meeting was arranged at the precinct, a controlled, safe environment where officers would supervise. Emily arrived early, reviewing her mental notes. Stay calm, maintain authority, convey seriousness without hostility, and ensure safety at all times. Every detail mattered. Every subtle cue, every shift in stance, every word chosen carefully. She approached this not as a confrontation, but as an opportunity for reflection and guidance. When Jake Turner arrived, escorted by officers, his demeanor was a mixture of resentment, fear, and cautious respect. He avoided eye contact, fidgeting slightly, shoulders slumped. Emily observed him carefully. Physical intimidation was no longer relevant. Psychological awareness was. She spoke first, her voice calm and steady. "Jake, you attacked me without cause. That could have ended very differently. Do you understand what could have happened?" His silence was telling. The gravity of her words, combined with the authority she carried, struck him more effectively than any physical move ever could. Marcia stepped forward quietly, a silent anchor of support, her presence adding context to Emily's words. "Jake," she said softly, "look at her. See what happened." She protected herself, and in doing so, she may have protected you too from consequences you can't yet imagine. Emily noticed the subtle shift in Jake's posture, the tension in his jaw easing slightly. He was listening, really listening, for the first time. The confrontation had become a lesson, not just for survival, but for reflection. Emily continued, maintaining calm but firm tone. Strength isn't about aggression or size. Strength is control, awareness, and knowing how to act when danger arises. Yesterday, I didn't want to hurt you more than necessary, but I needed to survive. That's the lesson. You have a choice to learn from this, to change, to reflect, instead of reacting impulsively. Her words were deliberate, precise, conveying authority and experience. The impact was subtle, yet profound. For the next hour, the conversation unfolded carefully. Emily guided him to acknowledge his actions, understand their consequences, and reflect on the emotional impact, not just on her, but on others around them, the bystanders, his mother, and ultimately himself. Jake's responses were hesitant at first, defensive, but gradually, the tension in his shoulders eased, replaced by tentative acknowledgement. Emily didn't push too hard. She understood the importance of letting realization occur, naturally, at his pace. Marcia watched silently, tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered to Emily later. "I think this is what he needed. He needed to see what real consequences look like, and maybe understand responsibility." Emily simply nodded, feeling a quiet sense of resolution. She hadn't sought this moment, hadn't desired recognition, yet her calm, precise actions had created the opportunity for growth and understanding. As Emily walked back to her car afterward, she reflected on the encounter. Survival had been one aspect of her skills. Influence the subtle, indirect shaping of behavior through restraint and example was another. She realized the confrontation had not been purely physical. It had been psychological, social, and emotional. Her mastery had extended beyond combat technique into awareness, communication, and the responsible exercise of power. Driving back toward her apartment, Emily considered the lessons from the past few days. Fame, recognition, and admiration were fleeting. The true measure of impact was the lasting influence of her actions on others, the awareness, the reflection, the subtle encouragement to choose control over aggression. She felt a sense of calm fulfillment. She had acted decisively, yet responsibly. She had protected herself while indirectly prompting reflection and potential growth in someone else. That evening, Emily returned to her training, muscles still sore, mind alert. Each movement, each breath, each drill reminded her that mastery was ongoing. Every moment in the parking lot, every word spoken in the precinct, every small decision was a reflection of her discipline, preparation, and awareness. She understood more clearly than ever. True power was not physical strength alone, but control of oneself, restraint in the face of provocation, and the ability to act decisively with both authority and compassion. The day ended quietly. Emily sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. The viral video, the news coverage, the social media reactions, they were secondary. What mattered was the growth, reflection, and understanding born from chaos, confrontation, and careful action. Jake Turner might never fully express the gratitude or realization that had begun in the precinct that day, but Emily knew the seeds had been planted. And in that quiet understanding, Emily Carson felt a profound sense of purpose. Survival had saved her life. Mastery had guided her actions, and compassion had extended the impact far beyond the immediate confrontation. She was no longer just a woman who had flipped an attacker in a parking lot. She was someone whose precision, awareness, and calm had created a ripple of change, a lesson in power, responsibility, and resilience that extended far beyond herself. Weeks had passed since the viral parking lot incident, and Emily Carson's life had gradually shifted under the quiet weight of public attention. Though she continued her routine at the police academy, training rigorously, attending drills, and refining every defensive maneuver, the city and soon the nation had begun to take notice. Emails and phone calls poured in, invitations to speak at self-defense seminars, interviews from local news channels, and even outreach from national law enforcement organizations. Emily, ever focused on discipline over recognition, approached these with caution, aware that visibility brought both opportunity and responsibility. Officer Daniels, who had watched her handle the parking lot confrontation, had been instrumental in supporting Emily through the sudden attention. "Emily," he said one afternoon after a training session, "they want you to receive formal recognition from the department. It's not just about the viral video. It's about your composure, skill, and decision-making. Your actions exemplify what we trained for. People need to see that preparedness and calm can save lives." Emily listened, letting the weight of the words settle. Recognition had never been her goal, yet she understood its importance for the message it sent about skill and discipline. The formal ceremony was held at the San Antonio Police Academy, attended by instructors, fellow trainees, and a small contingent of media. Emily's heart remained steady, muscles relaxed but alert, as she accepted a certificate of commendation from the chief of police. "Ms. Carson," he said, his voice solemn yet proud, "your actions demonstrate courage, precision, and extraordinary control under pressure. You are a model of what self-defense and professional discipline can accomplish. We honor you not for viral attention, but for excellence in training and execution." Emily nodded, acknowledging the recognition, but her thoughts remained internal. As the applause faded, Emily reflected on the significance of the moment. It wasn't just about the flip in the parking lot or the viral sensation online. It was about responsibility, the weight of skill, the consequences of action, and the subtle influence she could exert on others. Her mastery of self-defense had prevented injury, guided reflection, and in some way, influenced behavior. Recognition formalized what she had already internalized. Skill carried responsibility. Following the ceremony, Emily returned to her routine with renewed focus. Training intensified, drills became sharper, and mental conditioning exercises took on new significance. She reviewed every motion from the confrontation, refining techniques, considering alternative responses, and analyzing the psychology of both attacker and bystander. The viral fame was irrelevant to her progress. What mattered was preparedness, discipline, and mastery. Every movement she practiced was a rehearsal for reality, a continuation of a lifelong commitment to control and awareness. The aftermath of the incident also prompted deeper reflection on her impact beyond physical skill. Messages continued to arrive, young women reaching out to say they felt empowered, instructors seeking advice on teaching awareness and restraint, community organizations inviting her to speak about safety and situational preparedness. Emily recognized the broader lesson. Her actions were not just a personal victory, they were a blueprint for resilience, skill, and responsible assertiveness. She had unwittingly become a symbol of measured strength. In the midst of this new reality, Emily received a follow-up message from Marcia Turner. "Emily," she wrote, "I wanted to let you know. Jake has been attending counseling. He's reflecting more on his actions and your words. He's still frustrated, but he's thinking. I can't thank you enough. You may have saved him from repeating mistakes." Emily considered the note thoughtfully. Her training, composure, and controlled response had extended influence far beyond the immediate danger. She had protected herself, yes, but she had also created an opportunity for accountability and growth. Her peers noticed subtle changes in Emily as well. The same woman who had defended herself in the viral parking lot confrontation carried herself with quiet confidence, a presence that commanded attention without overt display. Trainees looked to her for guidance, observing her technique, her composure, and her ability to assess threats calmly. Emily, in turn, offered advice cautiously, emphasizing awareness, restraint, and decision-making over aggression. Her influence was no longer only reactive, it had become proactive, shaping others' understanding of responsibility and skill. One afternoon, during a particularly grueling defensive drill, a fellow trainee approached her quietly. "Emily," he said, hesitating, "I've been watching the video, seeing how you handled him, and I want to learn how to think like that. How do you stay calm under pressure?" Emily paused, her eyes meeting his. "It's not about fearlessness," she explained calmly. "It's about preparation, awareness, and understanding consequences. Every movement is deliberate. Every choice matters. You don't react. You respond. That's how you maintain control." The trainee nodded slowly, absorbing the lesson. Outside the academy, Emily's life began to intersect with public responsibility in unexpected ways. She received invitations to speak at schools, community centers, and workshops on situational awareness, self-defense, and resilience. She accepted selectively, always maintaining focus on the lesson rather than the spotlight. Every interaction reinforced the same principle: skill without control was meaningless. Influence without responsibility was hollow. She realized her moment in the parking lot had become a catalyst, a lesson amplified far beyond what she had imagined. Yet fame and recognition came with subtle pressures. Social media continued to circulate the video, sometimes highlighting sensational aspects, sometimes focusing on technique. Emily remained unfazed. She understood that attention was external, transient, and largely irrelevant to her personal growth. What mattered was internal mastery, the ability to act decisively under pressure, to assess threats, and to influence outcomes responsibly. Her viral status was a byproduct, not a measure of worth. One evening, as Emily reviewed training notes in her apartment, she reflected quietly on the past weeks. The confrontation, the viral spread of the video, her recognition at the academy, and the follow-up with Jake Turner had all converged into a single lesson: preparedness. Composure and restraint carried consequences far beyond immediate survival. Strength was not measured by aggression, but by awareness, discipline, and the ability to act decisively while remaining grounded in principle. As the city lights of San Antonio twinkled outside her window, Emily allowed herself a rare moment of introspection. She had faced chaos and danger, emerged physically unscathed, and influenced not just the immediate outcome, but the broader understanding of skill, responsibility, and accountability. Every aspect of her preparation, from physical training to mental conditioning, had converged in a single high-stakes moment. And in that convergence, she understood the depth of her own growth and the subtle power of mastery. The next morning, Emily returned to the academy with renewed clarity. Her drills were precise, her focus unwavering, and her leadership subtly evident. Trainees observed her movements, her stance, and her decision-making, often without realizing it, absorbing lessons in control, discipline, and situational awareness. Emily had become more than a trainee. She had become a living example of the principles she had learned to embody. Her influence was quiet but undeniable. Even as the viral moments slowly receded from public memory, the lessons endured. Emily Carson remained grounded, disciplined, and focused, knowing that true recognition came not from applause or media attention, but from mastery over oneself and the responsible application of skill. She understood now that survival was only one aspect of strength. Influence, restraint, and reflection were equally vital. And so, Emily continued her journey training, teaching, influencing, and growing. Her viral moment had become a catalyst, a reminder of what preparedness, composure, and deliberate action could achieve. She moved forward with quiet confidence, fully aware that the lessons she had embodied in a single, high-stakes confrontation would shape not just her life, but the lives of those around her, in ways far beyond the parking lot that had made her a momentary sensation. Months had passed since the viral incident in the San Antonio parking lot. Emily Carson's life had returned to a disciplined rhythm, her training at the police academy as rigorous as ever. Yet the impact of that single moment, the shove, the flip, the calm precision under threat, had created ripples far beyond what she could have imagined. Social media had moved on, the headlines had faded, but the lessons remained vivid. Awareness, control, and decisiveness were no longer theoretical concepts for Emily. They were a living, breathing part of her daily life. One crisp morning, Emily received a message that made her pause. It was from Marcia Turner, Jake's mother. "Emily," it read, "he's ready to speak with you again. He's been attending counseling, reflecting on his actions, and he wants to thank you personally." Emily felt a mixture of apprehension and resolve. She had guided him before, had shown him the consequences of his aggression, and had planted the seeds of reflection. Now, it was time for a final closure, an encounter that would tie together the lessons of survival, restraint, and responsibility. The meeting took place in a neutral, controlled environment, a small conference room at the precinct, supervised by Officer Daniels and a counselor. Jake arrived, visibly changed. His shoulders, once slumped in defensiveness, were straighter. His eyes, which had previously avoided hers, now met Emily's with tentative sincerity. There was no bravado, no aggression, only the quiet, cautious acknowledgement of consequence. Emily studied him, noting subtle signs of growth, slower movements, deliberate breathing, and a visible effort to remain composed. Emily spoke first, her voice calm and steady. "Jake, the past months have been about reflection and understanding, not punishment. Do you understand the seriousness of your actions that day?" He nodded slowly, swallowing hard. "Yes," he said quietly. I didn't realize how out of control I was. Seeing you, what you did, it made me think. I can't undo what I did, but I've been trying to understand it, to be better." His voice faltered, but Emily remained composed, her gaze steady and unyielding, conveying both authority and expectation. "Good," she replied, her tone firm but not harsh. "Reflection is the first step toward responsibility. You attacked without reason, but you survived the consequences. You also learned that strength is not about aggression. It's about control, awareness, and making deliberate choices. The ability to respond thoughtfully, rather than react impulsively, is what separates harm from safety." Jake nodded, his eyes dropping momentarily as the weight of her words sank in. The counselor observed quietly, interjecting only to reinforce positive acknowledgement. "Jake, this is your opportunity to internalize these lessons, to understand the impact of your actions, and develop skills to prevent future aggression." Emily continued, emphasizing not only responsibility, but also growth. "You have the chance to redirect your energy, your anger, into productive paths. Physical strength alone won't guide you. Mental clarity, emotional control, and reflection will. She saw the subtle change in Jake's posture, the tension in his jaw easing, replaced by tentative acceptance. Marcia, standing nearby, wiped a tear from her cheek. "Emily," she whispered, "I can't thank you enough. He's really listening this time. I think your calm, precise approach made the difference." Emily nodded quietly, understanding that her influence had extended far beyond the immediate threat. Her training, her control, and her composure had created a pathway for accountability and growth, a ripple effect she had never anticipated. The conversation continued for another hour, each statement deliberate, each acknowledgement guiding Jake toward reflection rather than self-pity or defiance. Emily maintained her stance, voice steady, emphasizing that true strength required awareness, discipline, and responsibility. Jake responded with gradual honesty, acknowledging his previous impulses, recognizing the potential consequences of unchecked aggression, and expressing tentative desire for personal change. By the end, the tension in the room had transformed from confrontation to understanding, a testament to the power of calm authority and skillful guidance. After the meeting, Jake shook Emily's hand firmly, a gesture of respect rather than defiance. "Thank you," he said simply. I mean it. You didn't just protect yourself, you showed me a better way. I won't forget it." Emily nodded, allowing herself a rare, small smile. She had acted out of necessity, had defended herself, but the unexpected outcome, the chance to influence another life positively, was profound. Her mastery had extended beyond combat into guidance, restraint, and moral authority. As Emily left the precinct, the city of San Antonio stretched before her, vibrant and alive. Life had returned to its rhythm, but the lessons endured. The viral moment, the recognition, and the personal encounters with Jake and his mother had all converged into a single, ongoing truth. True power was not measured by aggression, fame, or public acclaim. It was measured by self-mastery, awareness, and the responsible application of skill. She had embodied that truth in seconds, and the ripple of that embodiment would last far longer than the fleeting attention of social media. At the police academy, Emily's peers continued to look to her, subtly, almost unconsciously. She taught by example, awareness, composure, and precision in every movement. Younger trainees observed the way she anticipated threats, analyzed situations, and executed every maneuver with confidence and clarity. They may not have realized it, but her influence had become a quiet foundation of their learning. Her story, her skills, her calm authority all became part of the ethos of the academy. Later, Emily returned home, reflecting on the months since the parking lot confrontation. The bruises and soreness had long faded, but the lessons persisted. She understood now that self-defense was only one layer of a broader philosophy. Preparation, awareness, and decisive action could shape outcomes far beyond physical survival. Her calm, deliberate control had prevented harm, influenced reflection, and guided personal growth, not just for herself, but for others. The viral video, now a faint echo in the online world, mattered little. Its lesson, however, lived on. People she would never meet were inspired by her composure, her skill, and her restraint. Families, peers, and even those who had witnessed her in person had absorbed subtle but profound lessons in responsibility and awareness. Emily's influence extended far beyond what she could quantify, reinforcing the truth that mastery of oneself carried consequences far deeper than fame or recognition. One evening, as she trained alone in the academy gym, Emily paused mid-motion, inhaling slowly. The muscles in her arms and shoulders tensed and relaxed, her mind calm, yet alert. She reflected on the journey, from the chaotic shove in the parking lot to the viral fame, to the recognition at the academy, to guiding Jake Turner toward reflection and accountability. Each step had reinforced a single truth: preparedness and composure were life-altering. Every decision, every movement, every choice carried weight. She had survived, influenced, and grown because of it. Emily allowed herself a rare smile, not for fame, recognition, or applause, but for the mastery she had cultivated. Her skills had saved her life, extended influence, and shaped a path for accountability, reflection, and growth. The lessons she had embodied, and the subtle power she had exercised, would continue to ripple outward, shaping lives in ways she might never witness. That quiet knowledge, the awareness of her own influence, was more satisfying than any viral sensation could ever be. As the city lights of San Antonio twinkled against the night sky, Emily Carson finished her training, wiped the sweat from her brow, and packed her gear. Tomorrow would bring drills, challenges, and opportunities for growth, just as every day had done before. Yet she carried a new understanding. True strength was not fleeting or visible. It was quiet, disciplined, responsible, and lasting. She had proven it in the most unexpected, high-stakes way imaginable. And in that proof, Emily Carson had discovered the enduring power of mastery over self, influence through action, and resilience in the face of chaos. And so, the woman who had flipped an attacker in a San Antonio parking lot continued forward stronger, wiser, and prepared not for recognition, but for the lasting impact of a life lived with awareness, control, and deliberate purpose.